Welcome to the Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs that have chosen to define their life beyond the material. They have followed their soul on a hero's journey towards the mystery of the spiritual. I'm your host, Garrett Ng. Each episode will be learning from awakened entrepreneurs and spiritual thought leaders. They have broken through the mold of being ordinary to extraordinary, challenging our paradigm, shining light to the dark, giving hope when there is doubt. The moment of truth is upon us. It is time to transcend our world from fear to love. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome to Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, I've got someone really special. This person have hit the peak of success in his entrepreneur journey. Serial entrepreneur, very intelligent, very successful, but something in his life took a U-turn, drove him to go deep dive on the spiritual journey. Really study what the matrix really governing how our society, how humanity is living, how the universe is being controlled, and how the laws of nature is operating within. And not only that, because of his science background, he's applying the practicality, the system to the spiritual. I really admire Rafael as a person, and I look up to him as a brother, as a mentor. He's like many years ahead of the awakening entrepreneur journey, and he can guide so many of us. His content, his wisdom, I would listen to every single moment to the very end of this podcast because it's so unique. Like I could spend days or months looking for the content he's about to share on the internet, in library, and yet I still wouldn't be able to find it. So welcome, brother.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who are here watching this.
So Raf has gone from living in the Western world and unplugged to Thailand and living in paradise right now. Brother, tell me what drove you about making this transition from the Western country and to more so like a secluded paradise.
Yes, well, I had an interesting thing. Early on in my life, I discovered that if I sit quietly and just clear my mind and just relax, that I can have a flash of creativity or a flash of intuition. And I discovered it's almost like having, that little silent voice that we all have that sometimes comes up. And I thought to myself, I wonder what causes that. Is it coming from the outside? Is it coming from the inside? And I did a deep dive into biology, into science, and I discovered just by studying myself that if I eat the right way, if I sleep the right way, if I take care of myself, and I do the right things, the chances of these flashes of creativity and intuition happening are higher. And if I poison myself and I dumb myself down and I mute myself in any way, then they happen less. So I put most of my awareness into learning how to make these creative flashes happen more and more and more and more. And being trained as a scientist, I put a sort of a scientific methodology to it. I started to recognize patterns. By the time I was 40 years old, I was successful in all areas of life. I had a house with more rooms that I could sleep in. I had more cars that I could drive. I had more lovers that I could keep track of. And I was making more money than I needed to spend. And my intuition kept going and going. And at my birthday, I had this flash of intuition that, wow, I've made it. I'm a king in my kingdom. I've created my kingdom. And life is great. What do I do? And my flash of intuition said to me, what defines me as a king? The fact that I live in a kingdom or the fact that I can create a kingdom? And my intuition said to me, my silent voice said to me, follow me. Learn to be spontaneous, intuitive in the moment, and just invest in us, in this. So I sold everything. I said goodbye to everyone, and I went on a pseudo-spiritual journey because I wasn't following any spirituality. I was just following my intuition. That's all that I was interested in. And it guided me on the craziest journey that eventually brought me down to zero, having zero money, being present, intuitive, with zero. And it's like a veil got lifted over my eyes. And suddenly I began to recognize patterns of abundance that exist everywhere. And that's where the entrepreneur in me started to kick in, because it's like, if there's patterns of abundance that I can recognize, what's the next step? Well, you got to learn how to implement. How do you implement patterns of abundance?
So when you had zero, you have next to no material possession, but yet you're feeling the abundance. Is it even more abundance than before? Or is it the same type of abundance, or is it different type of abundance?
I was able to recognize abundance that I couldn't see because I was relying on security and safety of money. Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad sort of triggered this. I read in one of his books where he said that money doesn't take away your fears, it just covers them up. So I was successful and I had money, and I asked myself, well, okay, I don't feel like I have any fears. All right, let's go to zero. Let's see what happens. I can always start again because I trained myself to have the skills to be able to generate money, to be able to find clients, to do work, to do the things that I love to do. So I thought, all right, I'm just going to do an experiment and I'm going to go down to zero and see what happens. What if I was like a little seed of grass blown by the wind and I landed on a little bit of soil somewhere? Would I be able to sprout? Would I be able to blossom, to fruit, to grow? And it was a test. If it failed, I would have just gone back to work. And it worked amazingly. It's like I began to recognize patterns of abundance that I couldn't see before because they were hidden by my fears that were covered by the money that I had accumulated. So I decided, okay, I can make money. Let's go down to zero and see what happens at zero. Let's just start fresh. I just wanted a fresh start. But from the perspective of being in a body that's healthy, emotions that are clear, a mind that I can focus it on something, but then if I stop focusing, it just drops down into a meditative state. Right? So how to be present in a meditative state and be a part of the world, be an active participant in the matrix. Instead of going and living in a cave in the Himalayas or in a monastery somewhere, and I'm good with that. I don't have anything against anyone wanting to do that. I chose to do this in luxury environment. So I went down to zero in a luxury environment just to see what would happen, being present while it was happening. And I can tell you honestly, Gary, I would wake up in the middle of the night in terror because I only had enough money to live for a year without having to lift a finger. And then that went down and it was 6 months and 3 months and 2 months. And then my partner, Jantra, and I, we spent a year and a half not knowing when money would come or when it wouldn't come. And somehow it just kept coming. I just kept finding opportunities without having to go look for a job. And what I learned that I can do, that we can all do, and this is what I teach people how to do, is that we all have access to our intuition and our creativity. And our intuition and creativity can be tuned into a certain environment. Think of being born in a jungle somewhere in Southeast Asia, like my partner, Jantra. Her intuition is in finding cobras and finding food and medicines and things like that. Think of somebody born in the Arctic tundra. Well, their intuition is going to be around ice and polar bears and how to survive in that environment. I was born in the high end of the matrix. I was born into a relatively wealthy upper class family. And I imprinted how to be functional and intuitive in that environment. So then I tested myself by intentionally going to zero to see what would happen. While I was expanding my meditation practice, while I was working on getting my body healthy, while I was listening to myself and thinking, how do I make my creative flashes happen more often? Right? Because imagine if you wanted a flash of creativity or intuition. Imagine being able to know what to do to be able to have one in a minute, an hour, a day, within a certain time frame. So for me as a scientist, I discovered that my intuition and my creativity are part of my biological inheritance. We're all born with the capacity to be intuitive and creative. We just place a little attention to it. And just to bring it to current times, right now with everyone in lockdown, you can use this as an opportunity to tune into your creativity and your intuition more because it's relatively quiet. You need a certain amount of social distancing or separation. You need to be able to focus inward, bring your energy into yourself. And that allows intuition to grow, and creativity to grow. So I tuned it towards being an entrepreneur in the world of today, using science and art to recognize the patterns of abundance of what I can do to have the best, healthiest possible life, which includes, well, clean energy, clean water, clean food, for me and for as many people as possible. That's my interest in helping awaken entrepreneurs to their intuition so they can do whatever works best for them.
When you were sharing about the abundance, I don't know what it was, but something it just triggered in me that just got a bit emotional, that it just connected to your state at the time. When you share that you came from this external, extremely abundant state with the cars, the house, the female partners that you wanted, and you found that abundance from within. Can you describe a bit more of what does that feel like, the moments to moment? Or is it something that everyone would have felt in the past, or you have felt in the past? Or is it something that was unique that you've never felt before? Or maybe is it much more 10 times, 100 times more powerful than something that you have felt previously? Because I'm trying to get the audience a sense of like, what is it that you're chasing? This is abundance that most of us is like, is this guy on another dreamland somewhere? Because if you got like the fancy cars in the house, what else would you want? What is this bucket of gold that we could potentially get that is even more rewarding on top of having the external luxuries?
Right. That's a key question, Gary. So for me, I believe it's clear that every human being has an inner grace. We all have a capacity of having at least a flash of being connected, feeling at one, being part of a greater source, of a greater power, of a greater energy. Call it existence, call it God, call it the universe. Don't call it anything. It doesn't really matter. And for anyone who's listening, I would invite you to tap into a moment that you felt a flash of just oneness, of being connected, of being part of something that is greater than you as a little individual life form. And this is part of our biology. It's part of our psychology. It's part of our spirituality. We're biological beings. We're emotional beings. We're intellectual, psychological beings. We're spiritual beings, right? And we all have that. And for me, I had glimpses of it as a child. I also had access to knowing how to find external abundance. And I never chased after it because it was relatively easy to find for me because it's what I imprinted as a child. Just more lucky that way. But I chose to challenge that. I chose to test it. So I wanted to know what would happen if I was just like a bird, like a bug, like a fish in the sea, just me alone. What can I do all by myself? And what can I unplug myself from the matrix temporarily? I'm not trying to escape it. Just trying to do an unplug, a stop and reboot, just a pause, right? I love living an active life. I love being productive. I love creating new things. I love helping people. I'm not going to give that up. I'm not going to go sit in a cave somewhere. So I have a mind that just goes on and on and on, always wanting more. So I thought, what can I do to help pause this mind? How can I live? How can I eat? How can I sleep? And ultimately, it came down to, what does money do to my mind? So I did a deep study into that. And what I realized, we use our minds to create the idea of money. So money is an idea. It's the thought process. Currency in particular. Fiat currency isn't grounded to anything. So it's like, if you have $1 million, you have a certain amount of thoughts that can go through your mind. If you have $1,000, you have less thoughts. If you have $10, if you have zero money, there's almost no thoughts that can go by. So I intentionally brought myself down to zero, to the point where I intentionally went to nothing, just to see what would happen. When I did that, my mind just shut itself off and reboot itself. But being present, being aware. So I watched my mind shut itself down, and it did a reboot, just like when you have a smart device and you want to reboot it. Isn't it true? You have to close all the windows and close all the apps. You want to plug it in, and you want to let it shut down. It's going to do a shutdown and reboot, and then it can upgrade itself. My mind did that. My consciousness did that. It turns out that all humans have various levels of consciousness, right? We're born unconscious. We're aware of light, sound, flavor, pain, right? And then slowly we become aware of ourselves. So then by the time we're 2 or 3, we're like, mine, right? Because we have a sense of self. And then by the time we reach puberty, our bodies are mature, physically, sexually complex enough that we can function as a mature life form, as a mature human being. We have another level of consciousness that's available to us. So there's 2 ways to approach it. One is to drop everything, renounce everything, and go sit very quietly somewhere, let the old mind drop. And then the higher consciousness awakens. It only awakens when this is off. When the intellect is off, the higher intuition can awaken. We're like walkie-talkies or 2-way radios, right? So when you're pressing the button, you can't receive anything. When you're not talking, we're not projecting any information, any ideas, any thoughts, any fears, any values, any philosophies, any beliefs at all, then we can receive. So this is something that everyone can try for themselves. The conditions that allow you to be just present, relaxed, alert, awareness on, mind off, emotions calm, healthy body. So that experience is possible to all of us. I was so into having such a rich life, sailing boats, traveling, flying, doing everything I love. I'm an adventurer, I'm an explorer. So I thought, can I do this with everything? And there are certain requirements you need to complete. When you complete certain requirements, you're capable of doing a full system shutdown and reboot with everything in life. It's like we imprint whatever environment we're in. So you can imprint being fully present, fully enlightened, fully intuitive, fully conscious in a cave, and you'll be happy and contented in that cave. Or you can create a rich luxury cocoon for yourself. if you have the resources. Both are viable options. So for people who have the resources, you can create sort of a cocoon, right? Imagine a caterpillar that comes out of its little egg and it eats, grows, reaches a critical size, and then it spins, it weaves a cocoon around itself in order to transform into a butterfly, right? If the caterpillar does it when it's too little, it won't be able to build a cocoon and turn into a butterfly. If it gets too big, it won't be able to fit into a cocoon and transform. There's a critical size. And I was able to intuitively tap into what that was. I reached a certain level of abundance. And with that level of abundance, I was able to create a space for myself. I created a high performance, high quality cocoon for myself. And it took 3 years, actually. See, I reached a point in my life where I had enough abundance. I thought, I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to sell everything I've got and I'm going to invest in myself for a window of, let's say, 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years if I have to extend it, depending on my budget. And not think about making money. I have resources. Later, if I need to, I'll think about how to make money. And just invest in myself. What does this body need? What kind of exercise? How much does it need to dance, stretch, some yoga, some massage, body work? What books do I need to read? How do I take care of this body to see what kind of transformation can happen? And that's where it occurred. That's when it occurred. And when it did, I was living in a 4-star service luxury apartment in Bangkok overlooking a beautiful park, eating the best foods, getting massages with friends, with lovers, with everything, a full, rich life. Just simply focusing on what can I do to increase the space between my thoughts, to not be thinking all the time, just learn how to be present. And the reset occurred. And as soon as it did, mind comes back on. And now I can think orders of magnitude more effectively, more precisely. It's almost like being able to get in an elevator and go from being at the ground level of wherever you're at, and then going up to a skyscraper or a mountaintop and being able to have a perspective from high up. That's what's available to all humans when we can be present with our minds silent.
Wow. So I really want to honor you and acknowledge you for wanting to face fear in the eyes, especially as male, as usually the archetype of being the provider of the family, as the breadwinner. Our identity attached to success is huge. What is my attachment to money or needing money to complete myself? And you know what? If I have nothing, I'll be okay. And let's just test it out rather in theory, because I've done it in my head. And there's certain dicey situation when it comes to like finances and stuff. Well, if I'm on the streets, it'll be okay. Even like I had the thought of let's just sleep a day out there with my kids, with my 2 boys anyway. Let's just actually experience it. And if you've gone down to the depth and you say, well, it's actually not that bad, it's bearable, and eventually you acclimatize, then it's okay. But what you have found is basically it collapsed a lot of the fear or the neediness to hang on to a lot of the, whether it's identity or whether it's a need for a car, a need for a house, a need for the air conditioning, a need for certain lifestyle, and you hung on to it. And I've had that feeling before, and I'm sure all of our listeners have. But the more that we hang on to, the more that we achieve, the more that we acquire and we got, whether it's a sense of identity or actual physical stuff, a lot of the times that we don't know it consciously, but unconsciously, the more and more weight is being on our shoulder. At the back of our mind, what if we lose it? And that's becoming heavier and heavier. And that you've been able to shed all that away and share with us that once you're able to let go, you not only can find the highs of life, from going on the adventures, going on the jet skis, the sailing boat, the helicopter rides, but you can also find it from every present moment, from doing the simplest action, something that brushing the teeth, something we do every single day, like cutting a fruit. And if you can find joy in that, that heightened abundance is almost like instead of having a single orgasm, you have a multi, like omni orgasm every single moment of your day because you're just in pure joy. One thing that I want to touch on to Raf, like with our last guest, Michael Zeller, one of the Platts as well, we talked about if we want to meditate for a minute for most people and say that I control my brain, let's just shut down the thoughts and just be quiet. And within seconds, for most of us, that's a thought that comes floating in. And sometimes it's a positive thought, and sometimes it's the fearful thoughts from your past. Can you share a bit more of your understanding? Where are these thoughts generating from? Is it some from subconscious? Is it some from Einstein and Tesla? They said like things are downloading onto them. Or maybe sometimes I've had synchronicities happen that no way, it's nothing to do with my past, but an idea that came to me that is just so happened what I needed right now. It just come downloading. So where are thoughts coming from? And how do we differentiate, like if there's multiple types, which one is which?
Yeah, these are excellent questions, Gary. I like to think of myself and everyone as we're all born as thinking, feeling bodies. And we have no minds. We have brains, but we don't have minds. I'm going to define minds as contents. Ideas, names, attachments, values, beliefs, egos, all that stuff. That's our mind. But we're born with a core operating system, and we don't know anything. We don't know our names. It's not like my mom said to me, "Hey, you're Rafael." And I said, "Oh, hey, thanks. I'm Rafael. You must be mom. Hey, you're dad. Nice to meet you." Right? It's like our names get repeated over and over and over again. Right? When we have children, you see how many times you have to repeat things. Mind is repetition. Mind is hypnosis. And human children were all born necessarily in survival mode. So we need to survive. We need to be held. We need to be talked to. We need to be touched. We need to be bathed and fed and cleaned for years, right? A one-day-old baby chimpanzee is as self-aware as a 3-year-old human child. So we're born very premature. It's because our heads are so big for our big, amazing brains. So we imprint all of our patterns of life in our formative years. And they're all in survival mode because a child needs to be in survival mode. When we reach puberty, we're complex enough. We're supposed to be able to switch out of survival mode and go into living and thriving mode. Thriving being able to reproduce and generate abundance and have a nice life. You know, think of a plant that grows green, it's living, or a seed, right? So seed sprouts, it's in survival mode. The roots have to reach down into the soil, find water. The leaves have to come up and find air and light, right? Then it grows to a certain level, a certain size, and now it's growing nice and green vegetatively. It's in living mode. And ultimately, it needs to go into thriving mode, which is when it flowers and it blossoms and it gives fruits. If we look at ourselves in a similar manner, we humans are born as little sprouts, little seeds that need to be born, grown to a certain level, and then we have a capacity to start thriving. That happens after puberty. So we all have a mind, a mechanism that allows us to create an imprint of mind. I'm going to call our mind an external control mechanism because, as you know, Gary, you got to be able to, with one look, stop your child from accidentally falling out of a window or getting hit by a car. With one, hey, stop, right? You should be able to control a child. So our child minds evolve to be controlled externally. And we imprint all the patterns and behaviors of life in our formative years. Now, the first 4 or 5 years of our life, we're not very aware. We don't have a lot of memories of that. It all happens unconsciously. So we imprint at least 70, 80, maybe 90% of all of our thoughts, feelings, behaviors about life unconsciously. Now, if we were born in a very healthy society and balanced with nature and all working together to make this planet a beautiful place for us all to enjoy, then we would imprint doing that and there wouldn't be much of a problem. But I was born in a world that's a bit messed up. There have been so many wars, there have been so many problems. We're still at war, like thousands of years of continuous conflicts. And they're all greed-based and they're all fear-based. So we're born in survival mode into a fear and greed-based culture with lots of beautiful things too that are sandwiched in between. There's art, there's science, there's culture, there's beautiful religions, there's all sorts of good, there's all these toxins and poisons that are stuck in our minds. So what I discovered is that we have 3 modes that we can live in. We can be in survival mode, we can be in living mode, and we can be in thriving mode. Physically, but also psychologically and mentally. So I've taken survival courses, I put myself in situations to learn how my body responds to being in survival situations, to give it to that test to see what would happen. And just like when you drive your car, isn't it true that you're in reverse and you have to go from reverse to neutral before you can shift to forward? Same with survival. Survival mode is almost like being in reverse. And you need to be able to stop, change gears to be able to go forward. So imagine that you're a race car driver and you're the best race car driver. And I come up to you and I say, hey, Gary, did you know that you're actually in reverse looking out the rearview mirror? Would you like to be able to stop, put it in gear, and start going forward and use the entire windshield? And when you want to, you can go in reverse if you need to.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense? So our minds have these 3 gears. We're born in survival mode. This survival mind can learn how to live and it can learn how to thrive, but it's geared for survival. So it needs to be stopped. You need to switch out of survival and go into thrival, right? The way you do that is you have to create a space where you can stop. Obviously, you can't stop in the middle of the highway. You got to pull off. So there you are, cruising through life, accelerating, going through all these obstacles. Get to a point where you have enough confidence in yourself to say, okay, what if I just stop for a moment and I put everything on pause? I'm going to get back in gear later, but I just want to pause. I'm going to put everything down. I'm going to put money down. I'm going to put fears down. I'm going to put ambitions, goals, and dreams just down for a moment. Let this biocomputer boot itself. And then now I'm going to go back into survival mode if I need to, because there's, I don't know, a tornado coming, or I can thrive. Nothing, I mean, no danger. No lion is trying to eat me. There's no fire. I'm okay. I can generate abundance. I can find friends. I can raise a family, right? Many of us already have everything we need to be able to thrive, but unknowingly, we're using the survival mode of our brain. It's like you're in first gear and you're redlining so that you can get on the highway. And all you need to do is just change gears. But in order to change gears, you have to go through neutral. You have to just pause. You have to be able to unplug. I have to be able to shut down my smart device. Sometimes for 15 minutes it takes, or 30 minutes for a new operating system to download. So as humans, it takes a certain amount of time. So for those of us that are in active survival mode, then it's important to learn strategies. Go to UPW, go to Date with Destiny, learn how to make your move, learn how to step up, go out there and do something, take massive action, and get yourself out of your rut. But once you're cruising, once you're doing well, there's something to be said about considering going, hey, I'm doing really well. What if I put everything on pause just for a short time? Like we're doing now, the whole world is sort of on pause for a moment. And birds are coming out in places that people haven't seen birds, and the sky is clearing. And what an amazing opportunity. When we jump back into gear, how are we going to do that? Can we do it in a more intelligent way? Can we do it in a more sensitive way? Can we switch gears into thriving? So for that, we need to awaken ourselves as entrepreneurs. We need to awaken our intuition, and we need to awaken our creativity. At least that's the path that I took. It works for me, and it works for the people who try.
So obviously I've had the benefits of going through some of your teachings and your courses, which is so simple. It doesn't take a lot of time, but extremely powerful. I think you talk about stopping and rebooting your mind as a CPU. Back in Windows 95, it has to reboot it every so often. So assuming that our system is not as advanced, we haven't had as much training, we need to reboot it a lot of the times. And I guess what you're saying is when we have the fearful thoughts, we're in the survival brain, whether it's coming from the reptilian brain or whatever part of the animal instinct surviving part of the brain that's being kicked off. And unless you learn to use some techniques, and part of the technique that you taught me is through your breath work, that you can use that as a gateway or as a Control-Alt-Delete to reboot the machine. And when you come back to the thriving, then you allow space for the walkie-talkie for the signals to come in from a higher consciousness, from the universe. Where would you call the thoughts are coming from?
Right. So we're capable of syncing with our bodies. Our bodies can sync. If you put a rat in a labyrinth, it finds its way. A dog will climb a higher point to get its vantage point, right? We'll climb a mountain, we'll climb a rock. We have intelligence built into our bodies. And we have the capacity to create minds. So we can think with our bodies. And I'm going to throw in a new term. We can mentate with our minds. What we do, 1 + 1 is 2, or what's the square root of whatever number, or how do I write a copy so that I can sell my product or whatever. These are all mentations. So when the mind is on, either in survival mode or in thriving mode, it's using all the neurobiology of our body to create thoughts and to repeat thoughts. When the mind is allowed to put in neutral, our entire body, all 50 trillion of our cells that are all intelligent, are capable of sensing the information that's coming through. And because we can use words and numbers, and that information comes in through the filters of our mind, in pictures, they come through in words, they come through with equations. It just depends on what you've trained your mind to do. I've read that Einstein would go and sit in his bubble bath for hours at a time. And while he was playing with bubbles, his mind would stop projecting and start receiving. And his equations would come through by looking at the soap bubbles. I do it in the same way. I've learned how to recognize patterns of abundance and science and art and business and in life. So the moment I pause my mind and I'm not projecting anymore, information starts flowing back in. Think of a windmill. A windmill is like a fan, right? If you put electricity through a fan, the fan spins and it blows air, and you use electricity to do that. A windmill is the opposite of a fan. If you blow wind into a fan, electricity comes out of the other end. So we can think whatever we want to mentate. We can think all we want with our minds. And the limitation of our minds is they can only think about something that we know. I don't have any knowledge of Mongolian or Chinese, so I can't start thinking in Mongolian or Chinese. But I can think in terms of biology, in terms of number, in terms of business, in English and Spanish, a little bit in Thai now, because I'm living here in Thailand, right? So being able to turn your mind off as a projector allows you to have your mind on as a receiver. And the more patterns you can recognize, the more you can receive. But you can only be a receiver when you're not a transceiver. That's all. It's very simple. So being able to shut your mind with your breath, to me, this is one of those basic skills. Everyone should know how to floss. Everyone should know how to float, right? Everyone should know how to stop and reboot their mind. When you can stop your mind, you create the right space for it. You allow the environment to transmit the information it can receive. You now receive information from the outside. Lao Tzu would call it the Tao. Buddha would call it the Dharma. The information, everything that comes in from the outside, it comes in through your entire thinking, feeling body is available to you as soon as you stop projecting. So for me, being able to take massive action and go out there and make money and make the world a better place is absolutely essential. Additionally, each and every time I can, taking a breath, pausing, and just seeing where I am. It allows me to track reality. It allows me to see where I am as far as existence is concerned. And by existence, I mean not just the planet and the stars, but all of life. Everything that we're doing, we're all part of existence. So existence is going in a certain flow. It's going in a certain direction. And the way that I track that, the way that I go into that flow, into that zone, is by being present from a state of no mind. That way I'm not projecting any ideas, any fears, any values. With money, I was projecting fears about money. It was programmed into me that without money, I'm just lost. And you are limited without money. But being able to be happy, present, relaxed with nothing is the baseline for being able to be happy, relaxed with everything. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out there and go down to zero immediately. There's steps you can do to prepare yourself. But there's a richness that you find inside when you just know it from your direct experience, that you're self-sufficient onto life. Because you're part of a beautiful, amazing life that is thriving. Our planet is thriving. We humans are the only ones that are creating problems for ourselves. And to me, it's because we're thinking too much. I'm not saying not to think. This conversation obviously requires thinking. All these books here require a tremendous amount of thinking for me to read them and understand them and extract the patterns, unpack the intelligence that's there. But it just, to me, it's a biological fact that when our minds are on, we're projecting. When our minds are off, we're receiving. So wouldn't you want to receive information about where they are continuously? If you're on a spaceship to the moon or Mars, aren't you in contact with mission control? And don't you want to have information from the outside? Don't you want existence to give you feedback as to where you are? Because it's giving you feedback 24/7. It turns out that we have a natural mechanism that pauses our minds. And it's at the top of each breath and at the bottom of each breath. If you just do this, and in my course I have the simple breathing exercises, but if you just take time to breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in, pause for a second, and then exhale out. If anyone just stops and does this for a few moments, just notice what happens to your thoughts. And you'll see that at the top of the breath, the mind pauses for a split second. At the bottom of each breath, it pauses for a split second. That split second is enough for our bodies to track reality. It's what allows us to be able to drive a car back from home, back from work, from wherever we are, and not remember if we made a left or right at Main Street. But we got home, and we were thinking about something else. What was tracking reality? We have an awareness, we have an intelligence that's available to us when our minds are off. It's the same intelligence that we're sleeping, somebody whispers our name, we wake up. Somebody shouts somebody else's name, we don't wake up. Or you set your alarm to get up at 6 in the morning because you have something and you wake up at 5:59. How does your body know what time to wake up if you're like snoring on the side, right? This is part of our intelligence. We have that. The conditions for that to grow is you have to be in a healthy, pain-free body, calm, unrepressed emotions, and a quiet mind. Each time those three conditions are met, our intuition, our creativity, our higher consciousness is growing. And to me, that's the most powerful asset that I have, is being able to be present and alert at any given moment. There's nothing that is more empowering me. I would take that over all the money in the world. I would rather start with nothing and have that than to have everything and not have it. But I had to get there to discover this. Anyone can discover it for themselves.
Before I was going through this awakening journey, I used to look at, from a business entrepreneur standpoint, I look at people that's in a rat race. They are in a matrix. And now that you're talking about this topic, I know that I want to really delve into your understanding of the matrix and how to master the matrix and what that definition is. But what you said, it really resonated. There was a theory I heard from someone that if you look at the ants or the bees colony, they have a queen and someone that just sends all the signals. But all the bees and the ants, they all know the individual role, what they need to do. There's no need to verbal communication, but somehow they just know, and as a collective tribe. And one of the theory is that we used to be like that until our prefrontal cortex kicked in and we have the mind to think, and which started each person creating an identity for that person themselves versus being part of a hive. And from that, we started to separate because of individualism. Not saying it's a good or bad thing, but a lot of what you said, it resonated because like intuitively, our heart, our gut, our body, we just know the truth a lot of the time, whether someone is going to be taking care of you or someone is going to do harm to you, whether you're going to resonate with this person or this person is going to rub you the wrong way. And there's so much intelligence before that we don't know about as a society that mainstream science anyway hasn't caught up to a lot of these facts. So when you talk about the higher consciousness and the matrix, do you want to share with me like what is your definition or understanding of the matrix? I think a lot of the listener, if they're similar to myself, we're always going through the biodynamics, orange color as an achiever, as an entrepreneur, and we're very happy. There's no need for something more. Maybe chase another jet, chase another $1 million somewhere, or chase another ideal partner. But apart from that, we're very content with our identity and our lifestyle. But one day, as a lot of people get hit with a baseball bat in the external life, and they force us to look at life and not even looking at life from an intellectual level. Something is guiding us to look at different directions and start to wake up to beyond the external stuff. And the awakening journey, I start to see, man, I thought people in the human hamster, we were in the matrix. I'm so much in the matrix, and there's so many levels of the matrix. And I started learning about all these people talking about that we're in the 3D reality and 4D, 5D and 9D, 12D. Man, like that's the first time in 42 years I've heard of whatever D. And now across many different cultures, many teachers, they all refer to the same thing. It said like a hidden class in school that I missed out on, I fell asleep on. Now I'm only started learning. I guess that one of the things I want to share with the listener is like, what is this matrix that you refer to and how does it work? How do we master the matrix?
First, we start with their physiology. Like when we're born, we start off as bacteria, a little sperm seeking an egg. And then we grow into little clumps and we go through all the evolutionary phases. We start off as a little bacteria, we turn into a little worm, we turn into a little fish, we've got gill slits as embryos. Then we continue our evolution through being reptiles, which is why we have our reptilian brain. And then through being a mammal. When we're born, we're barely reptile functional, which is why we're in fight or flight survival mode when we're born. And which is why we need to learn how to shift up out of that into being a mammal. And then we want to shift into being a primate. And then we have the ability to be a human being. And what makes us different, we're a transition species. Think of the first fish that crawled out of the ocean, or the first warm-blooded mammals, or the first animals that jumped out of trees and learned how to fly. We're the first ones that can have a transition in our consciousness, transition that's metaphysical in nature. So what happens is that we do function as a hive. We can function as a hive. And a lot of the cultures here in the East where I am, I've noticed, have a certain hive mentality. It's more of functioning as a group than as an individual. Here in Thailand, China, it's like explore this part of the world. I find that people have more of a hive mindset, and that's emphasized greater than thinking as an individual. And then, of course, they can learn how to think as an individual. In the West, we're kind of programmed to think more as individuals and less as a hive. So we're less as a collective, but we have the ability to function in all ways. Now, we have the capacity when we're asleep to dream. And in that dream, we can fly with the angels, or we can be chased by the demons. We wake up and we were flying and making love to the angels, or if we were being eaten by the demons, we're going to wake up and we're going to wake up and our heart's going to be racing. We're going to be hot and sweaty. And if it was the angels, want to go back to sleep. And if it was the demons, we're not going to want to go back to sleep. And our bodies won't know the difference. It'll feel like it's real, right? When we're dreaming, it feels like you're really doing that. And it's just a mental projection. It's a mental projection. So then we wake up and we walk around. Well, it turns out that when our mind is on, we're also in a mental projection. It's almost like sleepwalking. Now, our eyes are open. We are walking around. I am talking to you right now, so I'm conscious. But there's a higher consciousness that can be awakened. So you can be unconscious asleep, and then someone shakes you or the alarm goes off, and you go from being physically asleep to being physically awake. And you can be somnambulist, you can be physically walking around, sleepwalking, right? Psychologically, you can be completely clueless about what's happening in the world, not paying any attention except going to your 9-to-5 job and, eating your frozen dinner and watching TV and drinking your six-pack of whatever favorite light beer you have. And you're going to be in a sort of, you're physically awake and physically living your life, but metaphysically, you might be in a slumber. Then there's this concept of awakening. We can awaken to a higher consciousness, of being awakened, to being woke, right? So you wake yourself up and you begin to realize that there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. So we become psychologically awakened. There's a metaphysical awakening that goes beyond that. What I call the matrix is the world that we co-create. All of us humans consciously co-create a world. The world includes, fiat currency. It includes time zones. It includes nationalities. It includes passports. It includes taxes and payments and governments and reasons to go to war and reasons to go to church and reasons to do all sorts of things. Everything that we do, it's a construct that we co-create. A lot of people, I find, stay there as far as their ultimate reality. For them, that's all there is to life. They're awake, they're functional, they're part of a group of society, a political party, their favorite sporting team, right? And that's all there is. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there is a higher level of awakening that can occur where you can function as an individual as part of the collective life on this planet, as part of the collective consciousness. You get a glimpse of that when you realize that you can have two different lives. You have the life, the business world, especially as an entrepreneur, you'll get a sense of what the matrix is like because it's a bunch of people out there creating a game, so to speak. A game where we exchange goods and services for things that we assign a value to. Being able to master that territory is easier if you can step out of it, if you can go up above it and look down on it. Not looking down at it like a bad thing, just kind of like, where are you in the forest? You're lost, you climb a tree and you look around and you go, oh, that's the east. Now I'm going to go east, right? So you have to be able to climb up out of the level of conscious thought. There's a higher perspective that's available to you, higher than conscious thought. But the requirement is you have to let go of conscious thought for a moment. Even if it's just for 3 minutes a day, 5 minutes, just climb up higher, look at where you are, and then come back down and keep going.
That's what Einstein talks about, that you can't solve the same problem with the same level of consciousness thinking, right?
That's right. So there's a higher level of consciousness that's available to all humans the moment we stop our minds and let that awareness. It's almost like an elevator. People speak of ascension, or mystics like Gurdjieff would talk about how there's the plane of the horizontal where we all live, and then there's the vertical where we can ascend to a higher level of consciousness. Different ways to say the same thing. We all have a higher intelligence, a higher intuition, and we have access to it when our minds are off. And most people who access that have been told to access that and to escape reality, to escape the matrix, to not be an active participant. So there's hundreds of millions of meditators and monks and nuns and beautiful people, truly beautiful people that have chosen to take themselves out of being part of the pollution and trying to find a way to be part of the solution, right? So they take themselves out of the mind game. And that's absolutely necessary. And how brilliant that so many people are like that. There are some people, like myself, I don't know, maybe we're a little naughty, maybe we're a little playful, maybe we're a little mischievous. I want to go in there. I want to be part of the world. I want to be an active participant. I don't want to be a spectator to life. I'm here to make a difference. So for that, you need to be able to jump back in. You need to be able to go in there and start making some money. As soon as you do, you go into the matrix world. You're part of it. You need to exchange. You need to agree on values. How are you going to invest your money? What are you going to do? What direction is your business going to go? How are you going to generate abundance? These are all matrix questions. So for me, the matrix is the collective reality that we create. In the East, in the past, they would have called it Maya, the projection of the mind. Now, if you go back a couple thousand years to the good old days of Lao Tzu and Siddhartha Gautama, later known as the Buddha, life was pretty simple. There were no time zones. You lived in your village and you sometimes heard news of the village next door. You were either a farmer or a soldier or a blacksmith or royalty or a tailor. What could you do, right? You only spoke your language and the neighboring village language, and you only ate the foods that were available to you. So dropping out of that mind was very simple. And there was nothing to do beyond that. You could go sit under a mango tree by a stream, drink water, catch a fish if you like to eat one, right? If you wanted some sushi, eat a mango. And that was all that was required to be completely blissful and at peace.
Or even thinking about what to wear each morning, what to eat. It's like there's so much choices.
There's so much choices. There's no money, no sex, no relationships, just the same robe and a begging bowl, and I'll eat whatever you put in it. Now, there's tremendous merit in being able to do that, but I wouldn't stay there. This body was born. My genes just don't allow me to do that. I'm born to be an active participant. So once you find that 0 point, which you can find anywhere, at any level, as a matter of fact, you'll imprint whatever level of richness and luxury, you'll have it at that level. So if you want to imprint being completely happy in a cave, by all means, please do so. We need happy people. But what if you want to be happy in your penthouse in Singapore or in Tokyo or in New York, generating massive abundance, creating millions, billions, trillions? I want to make trillions of dollars to put back into the earth. Like, seriously, why would I have a limit as to how much I can generate? I don't need that much personally, but I'm a human being. I can generate massive abundance and help as many people as I can. That raises the quality of my life. So in order to do that, I need to look at the world, as in like the plants, the trees, the bugs, the owls, the dolphins, the cockroaches, all of the physical world as one reality. And then it helps me to think of the world of man, the world that we create, of politics, of business, of religion, of money, of society, sports and theater and movie and art, all those great things that we do. I like to call that the matrix. And I like to be able to live in both worlds. However, my home is going to be the world of the universe, of existence. It's going to be nature. And my office, my working space is going to be the matrix. I don't want to live in the matrix. If I live in the matrix, it burns me out. If I live in the matrix, I'm disconnected from reality. I'm disconnected from existential reality. I'm in my mind all the time. And I lived in the matrix my entire life until I was 43. It was at 43 that I finally realized that I don't have to live here. I can come and work here. I can live in balance in the flow of the Tao, of the Dharma, of existence, of reality, of the universe. I can live in both worlds. So I need a distinction. So I'll call one the matrix, the world of man, of ideas, of money. And everything is monetized in the matrix. So money is probably the most important thing to look at as far as the matrix is concerned, because money will determine your range of influence. Let's say that you want to go for a walk. Well, barefoot, you can go pretty far, but with flip-flops, you can go further. With hiking boots, you can climb a mountain. And with the right shoes, you can go into a business meeting and walk out with $1 million. But I'm not going walking into a business meeting barefoot or in flip-flop. I'll wear nice shoes because that's what the matrix requires. So I'll play the game of the matrix, knowing that it's a game. Knowing that there's all kinds of people that are playing in the game and learning how to fine-tune my intuition, listening to my heart, being able to go in and feel if the person that I'm interacting with is coming from a good-hearted space. Because we humans, we have a choice with every heartbeat. We can choose to go in a way that allows us to be connected and healthier and happier as one, or we can go into greed, survival, selfish mode and just say, mine, I'm going to take what I can. So being able to tune into that allows me to go into the matrix and now interact directly with other beings, with other humans that are functioning, and I can feel whether they're functioning from a good-hearted space. I can decide to bring my business to them or not. I can decide, I can choose them as clients or as teachers or as mentors, or I can go, this person is on a different path. They're on a path of fear or greed. They're not ready yet. They're not bad people. They're just on a different path right now. And maybe they need to learn something. Maybe there's a lesson for them somewhere. We feel secure in our ability to generate abundance. There are enough of us out there awakening as entrepreneurs that we realize that we can trust ourselves. We can tap into our intuition and our creativity a little more, a little less, or a little more. I teach people how to do it more. And then we can go in and we can go into this world and we can be active participants. And to give you an example of how effective this can be, I had a client that came in from very high, like multiple 7 figures, learned how to clear himself, and then decided to try the same thing that I did. Once he was perfectly functional, clear, present, he decided to go down to 0 and start from 0. So he decided to go to a city he'd never been in Berlin. He'd never spoken German in his life. And he came in there with just enough money to rent an apartment for a couple of months. He walked around, he got himself a job at a fast food place, flipping burgers, frying French fries and stuff like that. And within 3 months of just being present in that space, he jumped up to the managerial position and started creating music, finding friends, speaking the language at €9 an hour, at minimum wage. He was able to start thriving at minimum wage, which is the ultimate proof of, to me, it's a great test of, is the system broken, or are the people that are running the system less conscious, less present than they could be? And to me, the system works fine. There's nothing wrong with the system. It's the people that are in it. So I'm on a mission to help awaken as many entrepreneurs at all levels. We need a light on in every neighborhood of the matrix. At every level, we need people to be present.
I know Wayne Dyer, I think at the age of 65, when he was working on a Tao Te Ching, like he gave up all his materialistic possession to be on nothing. So I don't know, Raph, maybe you're starting a movement out here and there'll be many entrepreneurs who be like facing the daunting task of fear. And when that doesn't control you, like you are unleashing infinite possibilities.
That's right. And that's the thing. So what I would say is if you're struggling, this is not the time to go to zero. You think of yourself as a little caterpillar, get yourself to a certain size. You want to be, kind of a fat and juicy caterpillar. You need a certain amount of abundance. Then you have the resources, right? Because the caterpillar accumulates the resources to be able to transform itself into a butterfly. And during that time, it stops eating. It creates a cocoon. So it stops making money. You need to get to a point where you have enough to live nicely. And you have enough to live nicely for a few years. If you were to stop working, could you still live well for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years? If the answer is yes, then, only then, you can consider going, okay, if I were to just put things on pause and create my little cyber cocoon, my little egg where I can transform myself, clear my fears just by going down to zero, later I can pick everything up and go out there and make massive abundance. So to give you an example of numbers, beforehand, I was working as a school teacher in a public school, and I was working as a coach, as a hypnotherapist, and I was doing okay. I was living well. I know how to live well, but I can't say by any means that I was, super rich or in the top 1% or anything like that. I chose to invest in myself and go to zero. And I actually went as far as borrowing money and putting myself into a 6-figure hole. I owed over $150,000. And I started from zero at minus $150,000. And as soon as my mind cleared, we made it to 6 figures in 3 years. We just jumped tenfold each year. We went from zero to a few $1,000s to $5,000, $6,000 to $50,000, $60,000 in a year to $600,000 to over $6 million. That's how fast it can grow. So I am in no way saying people should renounce money forever and go down and be at zero forever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just put it down. Don't renounce it. Just put it down. Don't be attached to it. Then, as soon as you're clear, pick it back up again. By all means, pick it back up. Pick up your ability to go out there and make abundance. But for me, if I'm controlled by fears that I picked up as a child, for people who had fears that they picked up from, well, my family went through wars in Europe and there was scarcity, and we humans we've had 5,000 wars in the last 3,000 years. There's lots of fear and so much around money, scarcity. There's so many thoughts and ideas about scarcity that they were controlling me. They were keeping me poor. They were keeping me unhappy. They were keeping me scared. And they weren't real. They were just ideas. That's the thing. When I went down to zero, nothing happened. My mind cleared. And as soon as it cleared, money started coming. I was hit hard by the crash of 2008, 2009. I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't know anything about investing. And I lost everything. And people who owed me money lost everything too. So I couldn't go after them. I could go out and get a job, but I didn't want to. I just wanted to see what happens if I just sit at zero. And the mind reset. And as soon as it did, we just jumped straight into action. Within 2 years, we made our first million. So, which was 10 times more than I ever made in my life. I was holding myself back with my unconscious fears. Being in survival mode is good for getting out of a hole, clearing yourself, and then you want to switch gears. You don't want to stay in survival mode because that sort of implies that you're still in a hole. Psychologically, it means you're not there yet. So then psychologically, I never make it if I stay in survival mode. I can only make it if I switch to thriving mode. But for my mind, I had to go to zero. Now, my wife, my partner, Jantra, she was born in the jungles between Thailand and Cambodia. Her mother was a refugee from the Pol Pot Khmer Rouge genocide, and she was raised wild. So when I met her, she had less than $1 to her name. And I said, I'm going to do this crazy experiment where I'm going to go down to zero. And she's like, yeah, I've been at zero my whole life. I don't care. I'll stick with you. Let's see what happens. And she would sleep peacefully next to me. I was in terror as money would go down. $50,000 in the bank, and then $40,000, and then 30, and then 25, and there were certain numbers, 8, 7, 6. We got down to our last $2. We gave them away. We just gave it away. And all the fear disappeared. Then we started making money. All her fears started coming in. She was terrified of having money. She was terrified of success. She'd imprinted having nothing, so she was happy with nothing. So what I realized is that we all have a script for what we're comfortable with. There's a lowest amount of money that we can have before we start freaking out, and then we sort of rescue ourselves. And then there's a maximum amount of money that we can make before we start sabotaging ourselves. And perfect example of that, think of like celebrities, inner city athletes and celebrities and musicians that go from nothing to being millionaires, multimillionaires. how many of them end up losing everything, bankrupt, sabotaging themselves, even going as far as committing suicide because the money drives them mad? So there's a certain amount of currency that we can channel. It's like current, right? So if you have something like, the AirPods, the amount of current required for this is very thin, so you use a thin wire. But if you want to run 220 volts, you need a thicker wire. If you want to run 100,000 volts, you need a nice thick cable, right, for that. There's a neural net that we create with our thoughts that channel money. There's a lower number of money, and every one of you that's doing there, you can think about what's the most money amount you've ever made before you started losing money and sabotaged yourself, or started drinking, or I don't know. I worked with an inner city woman who started making millions, and she would sabotage herself with heroin. It would drive her mad. She would have to shoot heroin in order to calm her mind down. So you can map out what's the most amount of money, what's the least amount of money, and then you can start working with those numbers. There's a way of using a dream therapy and a hypnotic induction therapy to start changing those numbers so that your mind can be comfortable with greater and greater amounts of money. I had to do it with less and less. My partner had to do it with more and more. And then one day you're happy with zero and you're happy with millions. You're completely free with zero and you're free with millions, which means you never do anything to compromise yourself or anybody else for money because it's just thoughtful.
That's a really interesting point. I know I asked you this via text not long ago. What is the purpose of dreams? Because I started having recollection of dreams and there must be a function to it. And then just a few nights ago, for the first time ever, I had lucid dreams. And for those of you that never heard of lucid dreams, it's like you actually in a dream, but you're conscious that you are actually in a dream. And what occurred to me in that particular dream is that I saw my wife and she gave me a kiss and that was okay. But why is she in the office? Like, I haven't been in this office. And if I haven't been in this office, that's abnormal for you to be here. There's something weird about this scenario. Hey, maybe I'm in a dream. And I paused time while I was contemplating and I let the dream continue to flow. So that's the normal dream that I'm sure most people have had this experience that can recollect their dreams. And I know that that's one of the things that we haven't talked about. You're one of the foremost expert when it comes to plant medicine and ayahuasca in the Western world. When we go through the plant medicine journey, specifically with ayahuasca, I've seen a lot of vision, including being the creator of everything, including this world. So all those three types of dream or dream world, are they completely separate, or they all have their own unique functions, or they kind of like the same thing, just different flavors?
Dreams are fascinating to me. I'm going to define dreams in the following way. This might help clarify things, right? So I'm going to say that dreams are how our bodies think with images. And all animals dream. You catch dogs dreaming and cats dreaming and chasing the rabbit or whatever they're doing, right? Chasing a squirrel. So we think with images naturally. Our bodies, our thinking, feeling bodies can think with dreams. This is why Sigmund Freud analyzed dreams, because if he asked the people he was working with, which were mostly very unhealthy, unwell, violent, psychopathic people, whatever story they told would be filtered through the mind. But if you just simply ask people, what are your dreams? It gives you insights into what is happening in your unconscious. So what is your body thinking about? So whatever you load your mind with is open for dreams to occur. If you spend the whole day in a museum looking at expressionist art, you might have a dream that is in that flavor, right? Does that make sense? Now, how do dreams tie in with thinking and with reality? Well, I'm going to say that when we think, we're dreaming with words and numbers. So dreaming is how our thinking, feeling bodies think using the images that we've captured. Our entire contact with reality is via images. Right now, you have visual images coming in and sound images of this podcast. And then there's the images, temperature and pressure and pleasure and pain that you're feeling in your body from sitting or eating or whatever you're doing, flavors. These are all the images that are coming in. And we don't have any direct experience with anything. We contact everything with the images that come in through all of our senses. So our perspectives of reality are based on images. And then our minds, our bodies, will process these images sort of randomly based on whatever is strongest at that moment. Now, what we can do is we can use our conscious mind to program our dreams for certain outcomes. It's called dream therapy. There's a simple protocol. It's using an NLP technique. There's 3 lines of code that you need to give yourself. So the first line of code is, tonight and each and every night, I rest peacefully in my sleep. Line 2, in my dreams, I will vent out or release or let go of, right? So you do like an ad lib. What do you want to let go of? Fears, insecurities, guilt, shames, desires, whatever you want to let go of. Line 3, so I can awaken, relaxed, energized, ready to have a good day. You date it and sign it. You do this in cursive handwriting. So you get what's known as an ideomotor response. You can program yourself to have certain types of dreams because you can use dreams to vent out content of the mind. Now, why would I want to vent out my mind? Well, the more I have running in my mind, the less it can pause and be present, and the less access I have to existential reality, the less access I have to my intuition, the less access I have to my creativity, to being present. So our minds can hold 1 million thoughts unconsciously. We can hold half a dozen conscious thoughts. So we can start setting up a series of conscious thoughts to clear our mind of unconscious thoughts that don't serve us anymore. So I use dreams to clear my mind of content. I can let the dreams happen randomly, and that'll give me information about what my mind is thinking. By learning how to do that, you can clear out vast tracts of content of the mind that are just taking up space. They're just junk files that you don't need anymore. So that's one level of what you can do with dreams.
Wow.
Now, when you set up your dream therapy, 2 types of dreams are going to come out. One thing that can come out, especially if you're getting rid of fears, is that you might have what can be called a nightmare or a bad dream. A nightmare or a bad dream is how your unconscious is trying to purge a fear. So the correct response to a nightmare to help it purge is to wake up from a nightmare and you want to train yourself to have the following first thought. Oh, thank goodness, I no longer have to be afraid that a monster is going to, eat me.
Wow.
Oh, thank goodness, I don't have to be afraid of being lost. Or, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to be afraid of falling anymore. Or, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to be afraid of being broke or of losing everything or being left alone. Right?
Is it my belief only that kids have more nightmares than adults?
Well, kids are born into a crazy world and don't have the coping mechanisms for it yet. So the world is a bit scary for most kids. It's a bit scary. So kids are going to have dreams. So what we want to do is we want to encourage them to talk about their dreams. My daughter, every day, every morning, the first thing I ask her, did you have good sleep last night? How are your dreams? Did you have good dreams? Oh, you had a nightmare that somebody was trying. Thank goodness you don't have to be afraid of that anymore. Wow, and how did you wake up? Oh, great. Okay, let's have some breakfast. Every single day. Or you were flying. That's so awesome. You have a positive dream. That's so great that your mind accepts, your consciousness accepts that you can rise, that you can soar, that you can fly. So I reframe the dreams in this way, consciously, because dreams are part of the content of our mind. Well, the best thing I can do with my conscious mind is bring it into my unconscious layers of my mind. When my entire mind is conscious, you become super conscious.
So when my
Something
son
happens.
is dreaming about monsters and stuff, especially after watching certain movies, what is the mind trying to detox? Is it like we don't want those monsters in our head, or is it trying to send a deeper message somewhere?
It's the content, yeah. So our minds go through, all of us, every single day, an hour before falling asleep and an hour after waking up. We go through a hypnagogic state. Our mind goes through different layers of hypnosis because our mind is hypnosis. And during those layers, our critical filters that separate the conscious from the unconscious mind are very porous and permeable. Things can come in. So I invite people to avoid scary movies, violence, the news, arguments, fights, even with loved ones. Just look, it's an hour before bed. Let's fight tomorrow after breakfast. Let's watch the scary movie in the daytime. But if we watch something that can be frightening, especially as a child, it'll load up in our unconscious, and then in the dreams, it'll come out. So I learned this as a child, that if I had certain types of thoughts before going to bed, if I tried to avoid a fear, then I would have a scary dream. And if I thought about it, I thought about the monsters, okay, I know they're out there, I'm not afraid of you. So whatever we put into our minds, it's what we're going to process. Our mind is our mechanism. So it's like whatever we eat, right? So if we eat healthy foods, they're yummy going in, they feel good in our body, and they're yummy going out, right? It feels good eating good foods and digesting them, and then you go to the bathroom, everything feels healthy, everything feels good. If we eat junk food and yucky food, it might taste yummy for a while in the mouth, but later there might be an aftertaste. It's like our tummies might not be so happy, and then the next day we might not feel so happy. So for me, the term food for thought, I take that very literally. What am I eating? I'm eating the most organic foods for my body, and I'm eating the highest quality thoughts. I'm consuming the highest quality thoughts from my mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I can choose what I want to put into my mind. And there's people that are using technology to learn languages while they're sleeping, right? Whatever you put into your mind. Now, for me, the most important asset that I have is being able to be present from the state of my mind. If I'm in survival mode for real, because I need to go out there and I need cash flow and I need to make abundance and I need safety, Then I'm going to load my mind up with everything I can about how to make money, how to recognize patterns, how to be better at whatever I do, how to take action. This is going to be my primary diet. I'm going to be like on steroids, so to speak, to bulk myself up short time, because I need to get to that place where I can take a breath and go, okay, there's food on the table, the rent's paid for the next few months. I can relax.
I used to play like Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like when I was sleeping. Is that what you're referring to? Or is it different?
Yeah, that would be a great thing to do. I have here on this bookshelf, it's all Robert Kiyosaki's books and books about money and thinking, and Tony Robbins. And I even have some books from Trump from before he got into politics, because even though he started with $1 million, he did go from millions to billions. So there's insights, his mindset. He's got a mindset that allows him to do that. And I want to be able to find those little gold nuggets. I want to find those insights from everyone who's successful. So I read anyone who's successful in what they have to say, because they're going to reveal the components of their mind. Our minds are made up of Lego blocks, of words, of memes, of ideas. So whatever I'm putting into my mind, if I'm in survival mode, if listeners, if you're in the survival mode, now is the time to, yes, eat the best that you can, but also food for thought. Instead of downloading nonsense from television, and find educational games so you can make millions. Get your mind thinking in how to generate abundance.
There's a lot more of these certain frequency or certain hertz of music that's resonated with certain chakras or binaural beats. Have you experimented with playing these at night when you're sleeping?
I have, and I've experimented with them in daytime and sleeping, and I've discovered the following. I think they're incredibly useful. I like to think of them in the following way. Imagine that you don't know how to float or swim, and you're in deep water, and it's overwhelming, like you're struggling, right? So someone tosses you a life ring or a life jacket, so you hold on to it, and now you can float, now you can take a breath and you can relax. So for me, binaural beats, and same like chanting mantras and certain guided meditations, they're perfect tools. I would call them pre-meditative tools for getting you in a calm state. They are going to technically put you in a light state of hypnosis. And that's okay, because mind is hypnosis, and this is how we function. So for me, it's like, I can't swim under the conditions. It's too rough. I need to take a break. So listening to binaural beats, using mind machines, using devices that will flash lights and sounds will put you in a light hypnotic trance. You can be aware, you can be present, and it puts you almost in a relaxed lucid dreaming state, right? Because lucid dreaming, and all of this relates, right? Because it's all how our mind works, is about being aware of the fact that your mind is projecting. And you want to be aware of your fact that your mind can project. Because when you're asleep and your mind is projecting, that's great. It's a nightmare, or it's a beautiful dream, or you went to the moon. It doesn't really matter, because you wake up and you're in bed, however it was when you went to sleep. But when you're awake and your mind is projecting, if you don't know, well, let's just say you want to know. You want to know when your mind is projecting something, and you want to be able to stop the projector and look at reality in front of you and just see it for what it is. And then let the projector turn on and figure out how to get from point A to point B, how to go from 0 to millions, or how to go from wherever you are to wherever you want to be using your mind. I need to use the mind to build a bridge to get from A to B. There's no doubt about it. But I need to look at the ground of A to decide what kind of bridge I'm going to build on it, right? If it's a soft, muddy versus hard rock, I'm going to use a different foundation, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So track reality. So learn how to stop your mind to track reality, and then watch how you can project, how you can visualize, how you can dream. You want to be able to know how to do both. So learning how to lucid dream is essential. It's part of the process. When I learned how to lucid dream, much later I discovered that what was happening is that my unconscious was saying to me, hey, guess what? You're now aware enough to know when you're dreaming and when you're not. How cool was that? Wink, wink. Try that while you're awake. Are you in projection mode, or are you in present mode? Now I've got a very quick little exercise that we can do online for everyone to try. You want to try it?
Yeah,
it just takes a few minutes. Yeah, to see how our minds can trick us. Yeah. So it's very simple. So here's what I'm going to invite everyone to do. I'm going to ask everyone to do as following. You're going to close your eyes, and then you're going to look in any direction, open your eyes, and notice what's the first thing you see. What's the biggest thing in your field of vision? Then you're going to close your eyes, turn your head in another direction, and do the same thing. And notice the first thing that you notice, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Look down. So you want to close your eyes, open them in any direction, and then notice what's the biggest thing in your field of vision. And do that 3 times. So I'm going to ask everyone to write down what it is that they saw. In your case, you can just say it out loud if you like.
Yep. I saw an orange poster with my oldest son, Davis. I saw the light on the right-hand side, and at the bottom, I saw a white envelope.
Great. Now I'm going to ask you do it one more time. This time you're going to let your head drop down, straight down. You're going to open, and once again, you're looking for the most important, the biggest thing in your field of vision, what sticks out the most between your eyes, and just look at it, and then just come up. When you're ready, and let me know what you saw.
My keyboard.
Okay, great. All right. So now here's the question, and this throws people off. And by all means, this is not a measure of anyone's intelligence. It's just a simple exercise to see how tricky our minds can be. So now my question to everyone out there: what about your nose? Did you ever see your nose? The outline of your nose on both sides sticking out, covering maybe 2/3 of
No.
your field. We don't see it, right? Is
Yeah.
that true? And how often do you notice your nose?
Not often.
Not often, but it's there, right? It's never not there, right?
Yeah.
Right. So doesn't that show that our minds are capable of distorting reality? Our noses are being deleted out right from between our eyes. How crazy is that? Now, as a kid, I'm sure you can remember as a kid, because I did this, I was like, what is that? Oh yeah, look, I can see kind of like kind of see through my nose. How does that work? Am I seeing through it? Or right? I used to play this game as a kid. And when I awakened from the Matrix, the first thing I noticed was my nose. Not just my nose. Every time my eyes blink, I see the eyes blinking, because it's the information that's coming in that my mind is automatically deleting 99.9% of the time. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So then the question that arose for me was, this is really what triggered my journey, was, if I'm deleting my nose, what else am I deleting? And am I adding things that aren't supposed to be there? And this is what Maya is. When you're awake, and this is just as a general test, when you're awake, you're standing in line at the grocery store. Okay, now these days it's a little more difficult to go shopping, but whatever you're doing, are you aware of your nose? Are you aware that you're thinking? Are you aware that you're creating a picture of reality on top of reality? That we're deleting things that are there. How many things are we missing? That's when I say there's abundance everywhere. There's abundance at all levels. But our minds are trained to only look after what we've been trained to look for. And when the mind is off, you can then see things that you're not trained to look for, because you're not looking anymore. You're just seeing. It's the difference between looking for and seeing. In order to look for something, you have to have a picture in your head. If I say to you, hey, Gary, can you please go into the room next door and grab, the thingamabob underneath the other thing? You'd be like, what are you talking about? How do I know? No, the keys that are in the second drawer. Oh, now you know what to look for. The house keys are the car keys. The car keys. Okay, then you come back with a car key. But if you don't know what to look for, how are you going to find it? Our minds are trained to look for things. So you can only look for what you know. What if you'd like to know what's available to you beyond what your mind can recognize? And that's when I say, well, learn how to be present with your mind off. Conscious with your mind off. You're unconscious with your mind off all the time, your entire life. We're all born unconscious with our minds off. Then we learn how to be conscious with our minds on, but nobody teaches us how to be conscious with our minds on. It's just one little additional step. Once again, I'm not saying to stop doing anything that anyone is doing in their lives. I'm not taking anything away from you. I'm just inviting you to think about, can you be conscious with your mind on? And as soon as you can, that's called supraconsciousness. That gives you a perspective. It gives you an ascension. It gives you a higher perspective. And one of the easiest way to know is to, like right now, I bet you most of you have already forgotten your nose. But I'm looking at the camera and I'm seeing the outline of my nose. And as long as I can see my nose and I see when my eyes are blinking, I know that at least I'm present in my body. I'm not in some body image. I'm in my body, which means the intelligence from my body now has access. I have access to it. Otherwise, if I'm in a picture of my head of what my body's supposed to look like, and I'm seeing what I want to see and not what is actually in front of me, then I'm missing a whole spectrum of reality that is full of abundance. It's full of possibilities, and it's full of beauty, and it's full of connection, and it's full of love. Everything is there. It's like you're surrounded by all this beauty, but it's always been there. So just like your nose, so you just delete it and you ignore it, and you chase after what you've been programmed to what's beautiful. So it's the brand bag, or the sports car, or the gold chain, or the amulet, or the clothes, or the brand, whatever it is that you've been trained to look for. Oh, this is beautiful. Right? But you look at children. Aren't children just like they're born in awe? I mean, if they're born into a healthy, a safe household, most kids are like, "Wow, Daddy, look what I saw! Wow, I look at the little piece of glass from the beach. I'm like, wow, It's so beautiful." For them, it's like a diamond. It's ordinary. There's an extraordinary beauty and abundance to the universe that is so ordinary, so mundane, so everyday. That's always there, been there, done that. And we miss it.
Yeah. And I think a big part is when we are using words to label stuff, oh, that's just another rock. That's just another piece of glass. We are making it so insignificant that it's not worth paying attention to. We'll put it in a box. So I think it's a good set to really like delve into what does the role of ayahuasca and plant medicine play in the unconscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious.
Yes, right. So you said the key thing, word, when you reduce something to a word. So remember the definition I gave. Dreaming is thinking with images. Thinking is dreaming with words. So as soon as you're putting a word on, you're in a dream space, which is necessary. I need to dream to get from A to B. How am I going to design a bridge that gets me from here to here, which is physically or financially or whatever? I need to go into a dream space. I need to have a vision. But I'm not tracking reality while I'm in a vision. Just like I'm in my office right now and I don't know what's happening in my garden or in my kitchen because I'm in my office.
That's so true, because when you say the word bridge, I have to dream about it, because my dream about what that bridge will look like would be different to what the person next to me in their dream, what that bridge will look like as well. It's fascinating. Every single word, if someone says an elephant, the person may think of an African elephant or an Asian elephant.
Or a big elephant in a tutu.
Yeah. It could be so different.
It should be. It could be. So you want to know what pictures your words are triggering. And are those in aligned with actual reality? Or are they fantasy? Like you said, elephant, and I saw a pink elephant in a tutu. There's no pink elephant in a tutu, but it was just fun because this is a little cartoon thing, game that I play with my daughter, right? So what words are we using? So then how does this fit in with ayahuasca? Well, ayahuasca is a brew made of at least two plants. One of the plants contains an active ingredient called DMT, dimethyltryptamine. And DMT is something that all animals have. It's in everybody's brains, and even plants have it. It's part of our nature. And it's what allows us to experience our dreams as real. It's what allows us to experience our visions as being real. So once again, there you are flying, making love to the angels, or being, eaten and torn apart by the demons. You wake up and you're like, oh, heart's racing, all hot and sweaty. It was a dream. And we felt it was real. Oh, and a little bit of DMT, endogenous DMT, was released for that to occur. So now you're going to drink ayahuasca. You're going to go into a setting and you're going to drink a cup of something that's going to be active in your body for 6 to 8 hours. You're going to go into a dream state, a lucid dream state for 6 to 8 hours. And what you're going to dream about, well, you can only dream about the content of your mind. What's interesting is that because it's inducing a dream state where the body associates it with dreaming, physically, the body associates DMT with dreaming. So you just lay there or you just sit there and suddenly you're in a dream world. Now, what comes up, mostly it's what's in our unconscious, because our unconscious is at least 90% of the content of our mind. And it's our personal unconscious of what we picked up over our entire life from birth, or maybe even in utero, right? Imagine you first open your eyes in the womb. It's kind of dark and there's sounds, and it's warm and all these things, right? To where we are now in the moment. But it's also the collective consciousness, the collective unconsciousness since the first Lego blocks of mind were set. And these were set at least 100,000 years ago. What differentiates us as Homo sapiens sapiens, hominins, sapiens that are aware of our awareness. That's what sapiens sapiens means. That we're the hominin, thin-skinned and like looking, I look like one of those for sure. I'm very hairy. Aware of our awareness. So we started with language. And as soon as we start writing things down, we start creating a collective and telling stories. We start creating a collective consciousness that goes back. The words ma and pa, me, pe are associated to mother and father in just about all languages, tracing back linguistically 40,000 to 100,000 years ago. So we have all these stories, all these archetypes. So now you can take ayahuasca and you're going to live the archetypes, the stories, the fears, the dreams, the desires, the gods, the goddesses, the demons, and the connection with everything. You're going to experience that in a lucid state for 4, 6, 8 hours. So for me, using this medicine is tremendously valuable. However, I would caution people to first learn how to stop and reboot their mind. Sitting consciously, just relax in a room. You can breathe, stop, be aware, conscious, from a state of no mind. You can tell when your mind is projecting and when it's not. I wouldn't give that up for anything in the world. That is, to me, the most valuable thing that I have. And to me, the most valuable thing that any human can do is be present, conscious from the state of mind. So now you master doing that. Not difficult, just do my course, do some practice, some meditations you can do. Now take ayahuasca with the intention of exploring the content of your unconscious and completing it. And go in. There's 2 territories that can be explored. One is the territory of the gods and the goddesses and the divine, which is a rich, beautiful environment that I definitely enjoy. But there's another territory which is less desirable, which is the territory of our fears, of our monsters, of what's hidden inside. And I'm saying this with a smile intentionally because to me, there's been nothing more richer or more rewarding than being able to go in and meet my demons. Knowing that if it gets too overwhelming, I can just take a breath and the projection stops, which means suddenly I'm back in the room where I was. Then I can say, go, and I can start the movie again. It's like you get to a scary movie and you hit pause. Pause for a second, or pause because you got to go to the bathroom. Pause, bathroom break. Okay, keep the movie going, right? So you can explore the deepest, darkest parts of your consciousness and see them for what they are as a conscious, mature adult. And here I discovered countless fears and insecurities that I imprinted as a child, but I didn't have the maturity or the experience to process them, and I just kept them as fears. And then culturally, we're conditioned to push our fears down. If there's a negativity that comes, push it down and stack it with something positive on top. Make your move, do the Dickens process, do something to push down, kill your monster, so to speak, right? This is the general wisdom. Now, if you have overwhelming fears, anxiety, and panic attacks, by all means, please stop them and catch a breath. Do it once, do it twice, do it 3 times, do it 10 times. I did it I don't know how many times. And then one day I realized, I was like, hey, wait a minute. I can kill my monster. What happens if I let it out? I'm not afraid of it anymore. I'm not afraid of myself. I'm not afraid of my fears anymore. I can have fears. I can have stress. I can have anxiety. I have these terrors that come up. And what if I just sit through it and see what happens? Because I can stop it if I need to. And sure enough, they come through and you just watch them and accept them. And they clear and they transform. The fears transform into hopes. The poisons transform into honeys. All of our deepest, darkest monster that we have inside turns out to be our greatest ally, our most sensitive, our most vulnerable, the part that's protecting our heart from being closed because we live in a scary world where it's hard to trust people. Even in our own families, it's hard to trust some of the people in our family sometimes when we're kids because they can be a little too rough with us maybe. You go in as an adult. I use these medicines to go in and explore the fears, the insecurities, the monsters, and clear them out. Once they clear out, then you can go to the second most dangerous thing, which are your fantasies and your desires. Because using these medicines, we can get lost in our fantasies. There are people who believe that these medicines are gateways to a parallel dimension of reality where there's real angels and real gods and goddesses. And I say that it's a beautiful projection, but if you can stop your mind from projecting, you'll see that there's nothing there. It's just a dream. It's a beautiful dream. And completing all the dreams in our mind, completing all the fears, all the dreams, all the desires, all the hopes, all the guilts, all the shames, when that completes, the mind resets and inverts itself. It does a transformation. That's the caterpillar to butterfly transformation that occurs metaphysically, psychologically. For that, we need to complete our minds. So I'm all about, if you're in survival mode because you need to be there, load that mind up with positive thoughts. Go out there and learn how to take action and work your way up out of your hole. Come up for a breath of fresh air. Use everything. Once you feel calm and relaxed, once you feel comfortable holding onto the life jacket, let it go, practice floating. Then start doing some deep dives. Start going down into your fears. Instead of pushing away from them, why not create a beautiful space? If you have the resources, fill your house with flowers and put life, have pets, have fish tanks, turn off the TV, put it in an aquarium in there, fill it with the best foods. Create a space where you can roll around on the floor, where you can do some yoga. Learn massage, you and your partner and your family, give each other massages. And then start exploring your fears. Allow your fears to come up. Create a safe space. Now that we're sort of self-quarantined, for those of us that have the resources, it's the perfect place to create a safe cocoon. No one's going to bother you. Nobody can come over and visit. And let your monsters come out.
Yeah, I remember one of the lucid dream I had a few nights ago. After the one I met with my wife, I had 3 other dreams. And the last one, I woke up in the middle of the gang fight. And I picked up a stick. And I saw one of the gang members holding a butcher's knife. I thought, man, I better drop my sticks because things are getting real. Like, I don't want to get chopped. So I don't want to provoke that person. And it's scary shit. And from that, I became aware. And then I thought, oh, this is just a dream. I could just opt out of the dream. Hang on. There was something that I learned from someone that taught about lucid dream, like face your fears, like very much like what you just described. And I just went up and smiled at the gangster, and he smiled back. And I went to the other gang and smiled at them, and they just smiled back. And the whole thing was off. As simple as that. That's what they taught me. Like, everything is part of our projection, our creation. If you learn to love everyone, and something I just learned last night as well, unconditional love is not, hey, I love my wife, I love my kids. That's still conditional. You're only loving when it's that person. True unconditional love is when you love everything, all aspects of good or bad, whether it's Trump, whether it's a terrorist, whether it's a rock, because it's all part of the same creation. And when we learn to love everything, we're unconditionally loving ourselves. Do you subscribe to that same philosophy?
I absolutely do. I think there's something in the word unconditional that got lost in translation or transliteration from the past. So I'd like to add something to that, if I may, because I agree 100% with what you're saying. I just want to add one little detail, which to me is the detail that makes the difference. For me, I grew up with the concept of unconditional love, which was the way I defined it, because I used to define it, was you love someone no matter what. That's what unconditional is. No matter what happens, they spit on you, you still love them and you accept them. And that's almost right. I learned to fine tune that. And by fine tuning that made a huge difference for me. What does unconditional really mean? And what I discovered for myself, and I invite anyone to figure out for themselves, is that unconditional, what it means is without the influence of that which can create conditions. And the only thing that can create conditions is my mind. So I discovered when my mind is off and I'm present, that my heart is open. And when my mind is on and projecting, the energy has to be shunted from my heart to my mind. So I can't have my mind on and projecting and my heart open at the same time. The power doesn't go that way. So because love isn't something I can think about. I mean, I can think about it, but I don't want to think about it. I don't need to think about it. I just need to stop thinking and then I can feel it. So when the source of what creates conditions, which is my mind, is off, now my heart is open. And the reason I add this extra little thing is because we live in a bit of a crazy world these days. And there are many people that run around and function from a closed state of heart. And these people are dangerous. And I've learned here in the East how to live with my heart open, but I've also learned that my heart has the capacity to blink. Just like my eyes have the capacity to blink. My eyes are open, but if dust or some particle comes close, I blink and move out of the way because I need to protect my eyes. So what I've discovered is that yes, I can use my mind and create this idea of unconditional love where I love no matter what. But then people come in and take advantage of me and hurt me. And I mean, I still survive. I get stronger for it. But I feel like I'm always sliding backwards. And sometimes I feel like I'm wasting time and energy because what about the people that are open-hearted? How can I identify them? I want to work with those people first. For me, humanity is a place where we really need to do something and step up because we're potentially facing some challenges, potential extinctions actually, because of our impact on the environment. And there's so many of us and we're just at war continuously with ourselves and our environment. So what I discovered when I was able to, this was after I was able to stop and be present from a state of mind, is when you do it long enough, you realize that your heart has two positions, either completely open or completely closed. And that it has its own intelligence. It has its own wisdom. This intelligence has no say over this heart intelligence. This heart is open until it meets someone that is closed-hearted. At that moment, my heart blinks and I feel it closed. And that's the information I need to know that I'm with someone that is dangerous. So I'm not going to leave my child with this person. I'm not going to invite him into my home. I may choose not to work with this person. Okay, it's the cashier at the convenience store. Sure, I'm going to buy the chewing gum and give him money and walk out. But I'm not going to have intimacy with this person. I'm not going to bring them into a place where they can take advantage. So I've learned that my heart has the capacity to love unconditionally, but it also has the capacity, and I'm going to use this word carefully because it has a charge, but to hate, which means to close itself. And that I shouldn't force my heart open. Yeah. I should trust my heart because that's the warning that I need to know that I'm in front of in a situation that's dangerous and that I need to voluntarily, intentionally, seeing my nose, fully aware, open my heart and give the person a hug, risk being stabbed, or realize that, no, this isn't my battle right now. This is not where the highest value. I have greater value over here helping these people or doing this. Rather than, okay, turn the other cheek, continue. How many times are you going to turn the cheek and get slapped? Once, twice? At some point you need to go, wait. If you slap me, I'll slap you back. So for me, the concept of unconditional love as a concept evolved when I was able to learn how to be present from the state of no mind. And then it opens by itself. And then I can feel people that open. That's how I found my partner. That's how I choose 99% of the people that I work with, that I spend time with. I choose to focus with people that are open-hearted, especially as an entrepreneur, because there's lots of people out there that are going to be cunning. They're going to try to take advantage. And I want to use my resources to help grow resources for others, to make the world a better place. And I don't have enough time. If we lived in a world where everybody was good-hearted and there was, one bad-hearted person or closed-hearted person, then I would actually approach that person and try to work with them. But we live in a world where increasingly more people choose to close their hearts. And I find that there's less and less people that are opening their hearts. And the conditions are more intense now. So it's easier now to feel the authentic people. And I'm not trying to create a separation, because for me, it's a choice. So I can look at someone, I can feel someone, I can know that they're open-hearted, and I jump in 100% with them. And I can feel someone, I can feel they're closed-hearted, and then I can say to them, I'm full alignment with everything that you're doing, but I feel your heart is closed. I feel that you're operating from fear, and we're operating from abundance. So how can I help you transition from fear? Or how can I honor and respect you and allow you, just permit, not complain. I accept you as you are in fear, but I'm not ready to get on this ride. I need open-hearted people. This ride is for open-hearted people. This ride is for people that close their hearts, but this is for people that choose this direction. It's a choice. Each and every one of us has a choice with each heartbeat. The heart can choose. My mind is in service of my heart. And that's what allows me to go out and generate abundance without hurting anyone. Because if my heart is closed and I'm not aware of it, I could end up tricking myself and going out there and there's lots of ways of making money out there that are poisoning the environment. There's lots of making money out there that are exploiting children, that are exploiting women, that are exploiting people. There's lots of people out there making a lot of money. There's millionaires, billionaires, and trillionaires out there that are making money hurting people. I want to network with the ones that want to make the world a better place. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to create a network of awakened, intuitive entrepreneurs that are coming from an open-hearted space. Because to me, that's what's going to make the biggest difference. Because right now I see networks of people that unconsciously, I'm not calling them bad people, but they're in fear and survival mode, and they're operating from a closed heart. And I'm interested in people that are ready to step up. And to me, that's what the world needs next. Awakening entrepreneurs, also from an awakened heart. Channeling abundance through their heart. Something that allows your heart to be open. Because being a billionaire with a closed heart, to me, I'd rather give the money away in my life. If there was no way I could open my heart, I would give my money to something that makes the world a better place than I would. In my heart, I can't live with a closed heart. Because I've tasted it. I've experienced living with an open heart. It took me 42 years of my life to learn how to clear my fear so that my heart would open the way it was born. And I'm not compromising that for anything. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's difficult to put this into words, but you can experience it. But the only way that I know how to experience is when I'm conscious and my mind is off. So that's my greatest emphasis. Be conscious from a state of no mind and go into your heart. Allow your consciousness, your awareness to drop out of your mind, go up into your heart.
Rafael, brother, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom. I know I definitely have benefited from your course, and especially in today's climate where there's so much fear and uncertainty out there. At the same time, a lot of people have a lot of optimism and hope as well. I know that with your program, all of your techniques that you've shared and the wisdom you've shared in your program is so powerful, but yet only take a few minutes each day or each moment to implement. And it could be so transformative to their life, from being close-hearted in that moment to being open-hearted and tapping into their superconscious, letting the intuition, letting the wisdom flow through them instead of using hustle and effort and grind and sweat and all this effort still going nowhere. So how do people learn more about your programs, and how do people get in touch with you on your social media?
Well, I'm on Facebook. You can go to rafaelaisner.com. And a little website that I'm setting up where I share my basic programs on how to stop and reboot your mind. I'm also adding programs on how to clear your emotions and balance and keep your heart open and keep a healthy body. And then I've got a separate program that I'm in the process of just newly creating for the modern use of traditional methods like ayahuasca. So how to create a comprehensive program to be able to find your balance, generate abundance, get your body healthy, clear your emotions, clear your mind, be present, and then jump in and be an active participant in making this world a better place. So my website is the best place. I'm on LinkedIn, also Rafael Aisner. And I'm just coming out, so to speak, to share this because I've done a deep dive into doing this work the past 10 years. I've been researching this because I want to do the due diligence to share information that will help people. Because there's lots of misinformation. And I want to share things in a way that help people figure it out for themselves. Because we all have what we need to figure it out within us. We just need to pause and look inside. So
And I think for the time being, people can access your Reboot Your Mind at no cost.
Yes, it's for free. I was selling it for a while, then I realized, this is like, imagine if there was a major flood or a tsunami coming, would you teach people how to float? Maybe how to surf, right? If you want to learn how to surf the wave that's coming, I charge money for that. But how to just the basics on how to float and how to be present and how to stop your mind. To me, it's a skill. We should all have it by now.
So we're going to share the link to the programs on the show notes. I really encourage you to give it not a try, but actually do the whole damn course. I did it in one night, I think. Not sure whether I was supposed to, but really easy, digestible, and powerful program. After like months of going through that program, I'm still implementing a lot of the practice. And yeah, people say that you have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get something that's valuable. But just like what you shared, like the good old saying is almost like mocking the best thing in life for free. Some people, hey, like what's free is not as important. But we talked about so much about the power of breath, just breathing and how much it really changes your physiology, your mind, and your consciousness. And nature has designed water is for free. Grass, being in nature, that's for free as well. But the matrix that we brought up, you have to pay a lot of money to get a high quality of life. And that's not true. And not saying that you can't have the abundance of the external life, but Raphael's program really helps you to ground up, not from someone else, some other guru teaching you, not from him being as a guru to teach you what is right or wrong for you, but it's giving you an opportunity to have the quiet space and for you to tap into your higher consciousness to find the truth of what is your truth. What is going to be great for you and on your journey to awakening as an entrepreneur. So, Raf, thank you so much. I need to get you on another time. There's so much that we can talk for another few hours, few days. It's been a pleasure and really, really grateful to you, brother.
Thank you, Gary. My pleasure. To be continued. All the best to you.